with the immigrant rock and roll. So yeah, this story actually here is from a year ago, 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. I made a post recently on Threads just to tell you about my life, saying, hey, so I put all my tax info into TurboTax, which I did. This is not made up. It wanted me to buy the $39 version. Turns out I couldn't. The $39 version. The reason it's asking for $39 is because that's the only way now to get them to basically take the money that you would owe them. Take the money that you would pay them. Or no, there was a delay, is what it was. I forgot what the reason was that I needed the $39 version, but it made me do the upgrade. I didn't pay for it. But what it was going to make me do was take that $39 out of the return or add it to the tax that I was going to pay at the end of it. So I was like, whatever. It wasn't even that feature as far as them adding or taking the $39 out of the return wasn't available at that time. So I was like, whatever. I'm just going to go to irs.gov and look it up there and see what irs.gov recommends. And they recommend like a whole bunch of different other websites. So I went with I think it was Tax Act. Put in the exact same information, and instead of paying a few $100s in taxes, I will now be getting a few $100s in taxes as a return. Made me want to look it up. I said, what the hell? Found this story, which is going to be this video from Channel 11 in Houston, which is the only story that I could find going through and scouring the net. And then I said, it also looks like they're trying to run interference. If you look at this post that I made here, basically I typed in, is TurboTax ripping you off? And you can see this video came up, and then another video came up, and it's by Intuit themselves. It's by TurboTax. And then the rest of the results were all just TurboTax Intuit results. And it seems like they're paid to be there. Those results are, and so basically they flooded that search result with all of their own results. So yeah, let's see what was happening 2 years ago at least. Let me do a quick rewind there.
Tax season is a frustrating
tax season
time of year for everybody, to say the least. But if you follow the complaints online recently, this year's proving to be a bigger headache than most. For some TurboTax users, refunds are coming back hundreds of dollars short of what they expected.
Yeah.
Tonight, Andrea Lucia getting some answers as to why that is.
None. So there was really no reason for TurboTax to take over $3,000 of my tax return.
TurboTax users are complaining.
My money is missing. So I was supposed to get back $687. I got back $256
on TikTok.
I'm sorry, what? I was supposed to get back $687, as in $687, and he got back $256 instead. That's
on TikTok.
That's a difference.
On Twitter, on Facebook. Scroll through the company.
My refund was $1K short and was deposited by TPG Products. Yeah, I would be very sus on that. That doesn't sound like a good time to me, dude. Again, this is in 2022. This is 2 years ago. But like I said, these stories are getting buried.
His own forum, and you'll find people there too who say they received refunds, hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars.
$600?
Short of what they were expecting.
My refund says $21.46, but I only got $654.
TurboTax's parent company, Intuit, said there are a few reasons this could happen, like if you didn't report you received stimulus.
Yeah, so that was the other thing that came up in the search results, is basically it was just a bunch of jargon of them blaming the user for not filing their taxes properly, rather than trying to admit what they admit in this story later
funds,
on.
Or if you have unpaid child support.
I have no dependents. I have no debts.
This
But
mouse.
customers say their problem is with the third-party company TurboTax works with, called Santa Barbara Tax Products Group, or TPG for short.
You only deal with them if you're claiming a refund and you choose to pay the fees out of the refund.
Bob Probasco with Texas A&M's Tax Dispute
Bob who?
Resolution Center recommends, if you can, to avoid dealing with them by paying TurboTax up front with a credit card. It'll cost you less in the long run and likely get your refund to you
Again,
quicker.
they're still blaming the
There
consumer.
have been problems in the past, I know, with long delays.
One customer who
Probasco.
complained said she did eventually get her full refund after she got the attention of someone who could help.
I woke up to a phone call from the president of Intuit.
Her advice: start a thread on the
The president of Intuit called her because her story made the news. This sounds like a very important subject, especially for it being tax season right now. You know, it doesn't seem like they're being genuine, and taxes in the United States are very mysterious. They're not as easy as some other places where you essentially just go online to a web portal and confirm your taxes. You basically have to know what you're doing, otherwise you will get screwed in more ways than one.
company's
In the United
community
States.
page and stick with it. Andrea Lucia, CBS 11
Yeah,
News.
I'm sure they are blacklisting all of those complaints. So yeah, our regular CIA agent
recently learned
who was probably working with Osama bin Laden, because you know he was part of the CIA too, is Johnny Harris here. So he's going to tell us a little bit about tax season. I guess should be a quick 15-minute video. I don't think I'm going to pause it at all.
I recently learned
But
how big
maybe
of
I
a
will,
scam
or I'll just talk over
taxes
him.
in America are. Not the actual tax rate, but how we actually pay our taxes. All of this.
Yeah, this is just like accounting shit. If you've ever taken a CPA course or accounting, you're gonna know that there's a lot of moving parts if you want to properly do sending and receiving as far as funds go.
In
It's
countries
very
like
annoying.
the Netherlands or Japan or New Zealand, none of this exists. Like, if you search how to pay your taxes in Estonia, you get a video that is less than 3 minutes long.
Should be all fine, so let's confirm, submit.
What? How does this exist? These are places where the government operates a free internet portal where the citizens
A free
pay
internet
their
portal.
taxes. Meanwhile, here in the United States, filing taxes has two huge problems. It's too
Okay, and so the Tax Act, if you use Tax Act, it is free as long as you make less than $79,000. If you make more than that, I assume you have to pay. I gave away that I'm
complicated and it's
kind of
too
poor
expensive.
too.
The majority of us taxpayers have to pay a private.
But also, that's a flat salary cap, right? Like, what if you live in New York or San Francisco, where the wages are theoretically substantially more than your average wage that would be like in Mobile, well, not Mobile, but like Podunk, Alabama or something. You're ending up paying when other people are not having to pay that are essentially in the same working class bracket as you.
Company to help us pay our taxes to the government. Collectively, we spend billions of dollars every year doing this. We spend billions of our precious spring hours tracking down documents,
Yes.
scanning crinkled, faded receipts, and just hoping that this little green number goes up.
Right now, the tax code is so complicated, so complex, it is not working for anybody.
Oh, and we also pay emotionally. We worry, we wonder if we're doing it right, and most of us have wondered what happens if we do it wrong. So
Go to
why is
prison.
it that a bunch of other countries have
They always run stories on the media, like Wesley Snipes going to prison for evading taxes, and this could
Whereas
happen to
we get
you.
the expensive,
It's the whole Trump
stressful,
thing. If it could happen to
time-eroding
him, it could happen to
version of
you.
Paying taxes. To understand this absurdity, I teamed up once again with the Times editorial board writer Binya Applebaum.
Paying taxes in America is tense.
It's scary. But the process of doing it doesn't need to be.
Binya has been reporting on economic and tax policy in America for a very long time. So let me show you how paying taxes in America has become the biggest scam you've never heard about, and how some lawmakers are trying to change it.
One of the most unpleasant facts of life. Taxes. You may be wondering who got all this money.
Why we have a
Who got all this
$10 billion
money?
year plus business in helping people do what the government should be.
I remember
helping
those
them do
commercials.
instead.
Walk me through the history of all the attempts to make a government-run portal to pay taxes.
So in the before times, it was a thick book. You picked up a copy maybe at the local library, and you worked through these complicated worksheets, either with the help of an accountant or in their dining rooms, and you eventually arrived at a bottom line calculation of what you owed or what the government owed to you, and put it in the mail. And then Ronald Reagan gives a public address.
We envision a system where more than half of us would not even have to fill out a return.
Okay, so when people say make America great again, they want to go back and ask them if they want to do their taxes like manually. Is that what you mean?
In which he says, we are going to deliver to Americans an easy way to file taxes. We're going to move from this era of long forms and short forms to an era of no forms. The government is going to be the solution to your problem.
Reagan was serious about this. In 1987, 78,000 Americans filed their taxes using cutting-edge technology. These primitive modems and these old machines called like the Zilog system and the Metron. And it was a hopeful experiment in what could have saved us so much pain.
And then, you know, his successors basically continued to make this promise for the next couple of decades. Bill Clinton makes it, George Bush goes out.
When I took my job 18 months ago, virtually every other major country in the world had the ability for citizens to go online and freely file their taxes. We didn't.
And then Barack Obama, when he's campaigning for president in 2007, he goes ahead and he makes the same promise.
We'll make it easier, quicker, and less expensive for you to file a return so that April 15th is not a date that is approached with dread.
This dude sucked all the hope out of everybody that gave him a chance.
At every year.
And now we have the Biden administration making that
can't
same
believe
promise
that.
once more. This story really begins during World War II, when the United States needed a lot more money all of a sudden to conduct this war. And so it needed to change the way that it collected taxes. And the innovation that the government came up with is it said, we're going to get employers to tell us how much they are paying their workers.
So because your employer takes money out and pays taxes for you, at the end of the year, the government already knows how much money you've made. They know how much you've paid in taxes, and thus how much they owe you or you owe them.
It's a great system.
They don't know everything about your finances if you have complicated stuff like medical bills or investments. But for a lot of Americans,
taxes could be done in 15 minutes or 20 minutes.
The reason why tax day is a breeze in places like the Netherlands or Japan is because that's the day when the government just sends you a pre-populated form. You can either approve it or you can amend it if you think you qualify for some credit or write-off or if you think they did the math wrong. But if you approve it, you're done in just a few minutes and your refund is on its way. But here in the US, they don't tell us the numbers, even though they already know them. And they don't...
Yeah, exactly. They already know them. If you do your taxes wrong, they will definitely tell you what your taxes should be. They might not tell you right away, but you'll definitely find out that they are keeping tab for sure as to what's going on and who's paying what and who isn't paying what. That will definitely happen. It happened to me. They'll send you a bill. They know where you live. They definitely know where you live. It doesn't matter if you moved in the last couple of days. They will forward it to your new address.
Don't even give us a platform to file our taxes on. So taxpayers are left with two dreadful choices. They either pay a private company to do taxes for them, or they do it on their own. And here's what that looks like. A high-stakes honesty test. One that is horribly confusing, where your children are actually called dependents, and where your total income is actually determined by adding lines 1Z, 2B, 3B, 4B, 6B, 7, and 8. I mean, it's not that complicated. Just get a hold of this 113-page instruction booklet on how to file your taxes. So if presidents from both sides of the aisle have been making an effort to do this, why has it failed?
I mean, the one-word answer is
Intuit TurboTax.
there is a company that dominates the tax preparation industry in the United States. It makes billions of dollars by charging Americans to help them complete their taxes. It makes a product called TurboTax, which for most Americans is practically synonymous with doing your taxes. And it has made an industry out of something that ought to be a public service.
It's no surprise to me that TurboTax cropped up as a solution to this problem.
And so this private company comes along and says, we'll help you. We have a software product that will make your life easier. And it did. It made millions of Americans' lives easier.
Intuit TurboTax. 100% expert guaranteed.
What happens next is the story of how we almost had what they have in other countries, a free and easy way to file our taxes. And it was almost given to us by George W. Bush.
Oh, really?
I think the early 2000s were the moment when we came closest to having a public filing system.
So it's the early 2000s, and the government is making this big effort to put more services online.
It's a pleasure to be here to talk about the e-government initiative.
A number of other countries around the world were beginning to successfully move their tax filing systems onto the internet. States were beginning to move tax filing onto the internet. There was a huge demand for it. You had a Republican administration backing the idea.
The Bush administration tells Intuit and the other tax prep companies to, quote, get another line of work. Like, you're going out of business. What is their response?
The company sounds the alarms, all hands on deck moment. They recognize this is an existential threat to what is an increasingly profitable business, and they do everything that they can to prevent it.
Okay, I vaguely remember this. I'm going to say this was when they started advertising their free version of TurboTax.
They engage a very successful Washington lobbyist who, among other things, is fond of comparing himself to Darth Vader. And they do something very clever. They say to the government, we'll construct a free filing portal and you can stay out of this business.
This lobbying effort worked, and the Bush administration agreed to not make a tax filing portal. And in return,
I remember that
Intuit
happening.
and other tax prep companies agreed to create a...
Because during the Bush era is when I moved out and I was finally living on my own, and I remember having to do taxes, and I was like, what is this? And then finding out that it was actually free because they just came out with TurboTax free. I'm old.
Version of their software that would be available for free to lower income Americans. So it's the early 2000s, and you've got regular TurboTax, which people have to pay for, but now you have this free version of TurboTax that Intuit was providing. Much to Intuit's chagrin, Americans started catching on that there was a free version of their software, and they started using it. Millions of them started using it. And this is where the real shenanigans start in earnest. It seems like a good deal in terms of like, well, if the tech company will do this and will provide it for free, then what's the problem?
The problem is that the tech companies had absolutely no interest in doing this. This was a trick.
A ProPublica investigation found that Intuit and others
added
an
investment,
lines of code to their free file site
so that it doesn't appear in a Google search.
You gotta hook them,
and several of the
and
other
then
companies
keep
are
them coming
also
back.
found later to have done this to make it invisible, essentially, on the internet.
And there was their marketing. Intuit and TurboTax started appearing everywhere, from basketball stadiums to the Super Bowl.
Welcome to the Intuit TurboTax halftime.
Then they start flooding the world with the word
free.
That's right.
If it's free, it's for me.
Free.
Feels pretty good.
To most people, this looked like the government-required free file version of TurboTax. But no, Intuit had created an entirely new program, confusingly called TurboTax Free Edition, to divert traffic from the government option.
You arrive at this website that is billed as being a free tax filing product, and you begin to do the work of filing your taxes, right? You're uploading forms, you're inputting personal information.
It was only after you spent all of these hours putting in all of your information that you discover that you actually can't file your taxes for free, that you don't qualify for the free version. All this hiding
that
from
was
Google
annoying.
searches, the confusing branding, the deceptive use of the word free. Are you confused? That was the point.
Tax prep companies have sabotaged the free file program. They've tricked and trapped American taxpayers into paying for alternative services that should be free, that are marketed as free, but in fact, they don't make free.
I fell for this so many times over the years. And after doing all of this work, there was no way I was going to do anything but pay. What other choice did I have?
I definitely paid
All of
last year,
this?
for sure.
Who were the demographic of Americans that are maybe most susceptible to this kind of deceptive messaging?
It's the middle of the population, people who are earning middle-class salaries, who have very simple taxes.
And the result was that by 2019, 14 million Americans that were eligible to use the free tax filing software that they had promised to make ended up paying a fee for commercial software.
You said how many?
Their tax to use the Americans that
14 million. Hold on, let me bust out the old calculator. Where is it? Come on, computer, keep up with me. 14 0 0 0 0 0. That's 14 million times $39. You're telling me TurboTax raked in for no reason at all, but because people were confused, $500 million? More than $500 million. Where's the class action lawsuit, brother?
Eligible to use the free tax filing software that they had promised to make ended up paying a fee for commercial software to prepare their tax returns. All the technological and marketing deception worked, so much so that they actually got sued. Regulators on behalf of customers sued Intuit last year for $141 million. They also agreed to cool it on the whole free false advertising campaign. So now when you go to the site and you see the big $0 sign, there's an asterisk next to it. So justice was served, and the greedy tech company learned its lesson, and from then on, taxes were free and easy, just like in Estonia. In 2021, Intuit announced that they were walking away from their deal that they made with the Bush administration. They would no longer offer a free filing software to low-income Americans. But in their blog post announcing this, they claim that they're still committed to making a free filing platform.
Nobody should believe that Intuit is ever going to seriously commit to offering a free version of its core business. That would be suicidal for a company to do, and there's no reason to expect them to act against their own self-interest. We should treat them like adults and assume that they're going to do what's best for them, and what is best for them is to charge as many Americans as much money as possible to complete their taxes.
It's ironic to me that Intuit often positions itself as like the advocate for the people. They had this whole ad campaign showing them all the time that they could save by not doing taxes.
We all have different, sometimes crazy things to deal with. We believe people can be good at anything. Yes, even taxes.
In the free market, you have the right to walk away. That's the defining feature of the free market.
You have the right to walk away.
You don't need to buy the apples, you don't need to buy the car, you
or
don't need to buy the
lose
computer.
$546 million collectively.
What these companies are doing are standing astride the highway that everybody
conned.
needs
You
to
got
travel
suckered.
and collecting tolls. And so the idea that this is a private market is ludicrous. And the Bush administration was quite rightly saying to these companies, get off the highway. You are not allowed to collect tolls here.
But luckily, there might just be change in the air.
The IRS is releasing a report this week on the possibility of a free government-run tax filing service.
The Biden administration has funded a pilot program for the IRS to create a portal where
so that's what I had heard of.
Without
and that's the reason I went to the IRS
third-party
website.
middleman called TurboTax. They're set to launch this as a small pilot for the 2024 tax season. But
Okay,
of course,
next
They
year.
are determined to prevent this or to make it as impractical and small scale as possible because they have lots of money to throw at it. They're collecting from all of us every year our fees for filing taxes and using them to ensure that we have to continue paying those fees to file taxes.
Bloomberg reported that Intuit's spending on lobbying has hit an all-time high. It's paying dozens of lobbyists. These lobbyists include Mitch McConnell's speechwriter, Nancy Pelosi's ex-chief of staff, a former Republican congressman, and an advisor to Joe Biden when he was vice president.
You know, it's really striking because, the rhetoric around the IRS is so unremittingly negative that you might assume that Americans would want the protection that TurboTax says it is offering to them. But when pollsters go out and ask the American people about this, both parties say, we want a government option. We
This
want a
computer
free
sucks.
filing portal. We do not understand why we need to pay in order to pay our taxes. It doesn't make any sense.
Each time Free File came up, an army of well-paid lawyers and lobbyists descends on Congress to squash it. This must not be allowed to happen again.
But the pilot program is already in danger of ending. House Republicans are pushing to cut $14 billion in funding for the IRS, including the money for the pilot program. They say that the government can't be trusted to tell Americans how much they owe the government. But this isn't a partisan issue. Leaders from both sides of the aisle have known for decades that we need to make this happen. This is the sensible thing to do. And hopefully, this is the moment to finally make it happen.
I think at the end of the day, this story is about faith in government. It's about the ability of the government to do what it should have been doing all along, to do it well, and to deliver what Americans deserve, which is an easy and free way to file their taxes. This is a chance for the government to prove
that's what we've been
itself. It's a
saying
chance
for the
government
last
to make
10
right
minutes
on a
there, buddy.
promise that it has broken so often over the last 40 years, and to say, we can do better, we are doing better. We're going to do this right.
That video could have literally been 3 minutes. Yeah, I think we're being screwed pretty badly. Alright, so just to put that into perspective,
the analysis and homelessness.
Shocking
rise in.
When did I hit play? Is my mouse just going wacky? Like, I can't... I don't know. I think I need to relaunch Chrome. Okay, relaunch Chrome. Relaunch it now. What's gonna happen? Is it gonna work now? No, that's still not gonna work.
A disturbing analysis and homelessness.
In homeless.
I hate how slow this computer is. Yeah, taxes, you know, and homelessness. They need to pay for everything, and then at the end of the year find out that you can't pay for your living expenses or your earning expenses. It kind of sucks. I would imagine these things are somewhat related at times, because if you get hit at the end of the year, or, well, they say at the end of the year, but at the beginning of the year, really, with a bill that says, oh, you have to pay $5,000 in tax to the IRS, and this is what you owe. But let's say that that's incorrect, and it's just kind of like TurboTax is screwing you over, or, you know, that $500 that you were expecting to have now needs to go to paying taxes in $500, and you don't know, or you aren't aware of programs or procedures as far as taxes go, and the payment of taxes. You could easily just fork over the cash and then not be able to pay rent the next month, or not be able to buy groceries, or whatever the case is. Now that can lead to several other things. I'm thinking worst case scenario here, and you could probably end up homeless. I think it's said that most people in the United States can't afford a $600 emergency. Paying taxes to some people would be one of those emergencies, because, you know, we're all scared. If we don't pay our taxes, then what's going to happen to us? Is the IRS going to come after us just like they would Wesley Snipes? Like, are they going to come and arrest us and do the perp walk? Majority of the time, no. They'll send you a letter and they'll say, hey, you owe us this money, pay it. And then not only will they do that, they'll continue to send you that letter if you don't pay, and then they'll add interest to it. That's one of the things that they will do. Or they'll send an auditor out to audit you, and that's probably one of the worst case scenarios. Or there's other methods of the IRS getting their money back. Either way, I would probably say, you know, don't mess with the IRS. But what you can do is there are those other options where they can give you a payment plan. You'll probably pay more than you owe. All you have to do is contact them and talk to them. There are things that you can do, even if it's a few $100s. You can actually go through and essentially put out like kind of like a loan program where you pay them back in installments. this whole freaking out thing about taxes, I think we make it more serious than it actually is, because of what we've seen in the news, and because of what we've seen in media. And I do believe that things like that are purposely put out there to mislead the public, to make sure that we do pay taxes, and that, you know, the middle class and lower class people who have a much higher risk of ending up being one of the, I think it's 600,000 homeless in the United States. We live in constant fear of that, because it's either pay your bills or you're homeless, one of the two, because that's just really the theory of living and being free in the United States, right?
A disturbing analysis of homelessness.
Shocking rise in homelessness.
Oregon has the second highest rate of unsheltered homelessness nationwide.
The problem has worsened, and the number of people experiencing homelessness has grown year over year.
The United States is supposedly a wealthy country. Despite this wealth, it has generally failed to deliver to the masses the freedom and pursuit of happiness promised in its founding scriptures. But isn't the US the richest country on Earth? Can a nation truly be considered rich when hundreds of thousands of its own citizens are sleeping on the street? In this video, we'll analyze the housing crisis in the US, what's causing it, why it's getting worse, and how it's driving Americans into poverty. If you enjoy what we do, then don't forget to like the video, and check out our Patreon for exclusive content and early releases.
Not second thought.
Okay, obviously, the US didn't invent homelessness or property. They've been around more or less since the dawn of civilization. But in more modern times, owning property has granted immense power. Take the early United States, for example. Owning property was so valued and so tied to morality that being homeless was illegal. Now, if you go looking for a law that compels homeownership or explicitly says being homeless is illegal, you won't find one. Since the 16th century, being unhoused has been criminalized under the euphemism vagrancy. In a 2019 paper, Risa Goluboff, professor of history and law at the University of Virginia, discusses the history of vagrancy laws and describes them as, quote, generally making it a crime to be poor, idle, dissolute, immoral, drunk, lewd, or suspicious. Goluboff bluntly and concisely explains the purpose of these.
No suspiciousness, just like the dude in the yellow jacket in New York.
Laws, saying, quote, they served as a ubiquitous tool for maintaining hierarchy and order in American society. Since this hierarchy and order in the United States is dictated by liberalism and capitalism, these laws ultimately benefit the rich and the ruling class. Industrialization accelerated in the 1820s and 1830s. Causing a mass migration from the farms to the cities. People began to work for wages instead of farming or working a trade, and therefore became entirely dependent on the capitalist aristocracy. President and unapologetic war criminal Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act in 1830, marking the first federal legislation that directly caused mass homelessness. By the 1850s,
Andrew Jackson made his plea: removal of the Cherokee.
Police stations served as a makeshift, often violent and inhumane shelter system. You might be surprised to learn that until the 1870s, the term homelessness didn't exist. It was coined during a tumultuous time in the United States. The slaves, freed without any support or compensation, were being subjected to the early prison industrial complex. The National Railroad system was being constructed, and the nation was suffering the worst economic depression in US history. In fact, this period was called the Great Depression prior to the one we think of today, and there's ongoing debate about which was worse. This prequel Great Depression was responsible for 20% of the total US population losing their homes. If that were to happen today, 66.8 million people would be unhoused. That's roughly the total population of California and Texas. The Great Depression of the 1930s and natural disasters like the Dust Bowl led to the next major explosion in the
But JT, if everybody's unhoused, then who's going to own the houses? Nobody?
Unhoused population. Liberals tend to give too much credit to the New Deal under the Roosevelt regime. However, many, if not all, of the programs facilitated systemic racism, which severely held back the success of the legislation. For now, we'll focus on the National Housing Act, which created the Federal Housing Administration, or FHA. Richard Rothstein, author of The Color of Law, says the FHA is a state-sponsored system of discrimination that was primarily designed to provide housing to white, middle-class, and lower-middle-class families. The U.S. government created and incentivized the...
Everybody always says, just get an FHA loan. You only have to pay 3.5%, and they don't bother mentioning the qualifications or the differences in the loan types. And the insecurities of getting an FHA loan.
The system known as redlining, which the Texas Homeless Network correctly observes paved the way for African Americans' overrepresentation in homeless populations today. These programs created vast wealth, mostly for white families, through the 60s. Unfortunately, housing discrimination wouldn't become illegal, on paper and weakly enforced, until 1968 with the Fair Housing Act. The 1950s also bore witness
I believe these discrimination laws are something known as, Jim Crow laws?
To one of the most cruel and overlooked policy decisions in U.S. history, deinstitutionalization, or moving from centralized and often isolated mental health care institutions to a community-based model. Due to the incentives created in the U.S. for-profit healthcare system, an ignorant medical establishment, and a bigoted public, thousands of patients ended up unhoused and without resources. The process of deinstitutionalization was painfully slow, lasting until the 1970s. Despite these challenges, a movement against the vagrancy regime scored a major victory when in 1972 the Supreme Court ruled in the case of Papa Christou versus City of Jacksonville, in which 8 defendants were convicted in Florida for violating a Jacksonville vagrancy ordinance. Justice Douglas stated in the judgment that the ordinance was void for vagueness, because it fails to give a person of ordinary intelligence fair notice that his contemplated conduct is forbidden by the statute, it encourages arbitrary and erratic arrests and convictions, it makes criminal activities that are normally innocent, and it places almost unfettered discretion in the hands of the police. Much of the more modern epidemic of homelessness started in the late 70s and early 80s. The Reagan administration infamously ignored the largest public health crisis in living memory, the HIV and AIDS pandemic. As a result of the lack of federal support, many suffering from HIV and AIDS became homeless before succumbing to the disease. The 1970s and 80s saw a flood of neoliberal policies that shaped the modern homelessness epidemic we experience today. Now, we can't talk about homelessness without mentioning the war on drugs, started by Richard Nixon and carried forward by every US president since. John Ehrlichman, assistant to the president for domestic affairs under Nixon, did not mince words when he later confessed the Nixon White House had 2 enemies, the anti-war left and black people. We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did.
Yep.
This war on the left and people of color led to unprecedented and ruthless incarceration in conditions more akin to concentration camps than institutions of reform. According to a 2018 study, the unemployment rate among people who were formerly incarcerated is 27%. This is higher than the total unemployment rate during any period in US history, including the Great Depression. Due to the difficulty in finding work, formerly incarcerated people often become or underhoused and are forced by their material conditions into antisocial behavior for survival. The recidivism rate in the United States is one of the highest in the world, a staggering 76.6%.
Wow.
Clearly, if just one conviction can make it incredibly hard to find work and thus proper shelter, then multiple convictions make it all but impossible. This condemns people to an undignified and traumatic life. By now, based on countless studies and plain common sense, it should be obvious that the solution to most antisocial behavior is to ensure basic human needs are met. Nutritious food, clean water, dignified shelter, and high-quality healthcare. Since the war on drugs had no intention of actually solving the problem, it not only locked up millions, but also created the largest surge of unhoused people since the Indian Removal Act. And this process is ongoing. Unhoused people are targeted by state authorities both legally and physically. A litany of laws including loitering, camping in parks or on sidewalks, and trespassing all seek to criminalize being unhoused. Police violence against the homeless has its own bloody history. But
I hate it when people are like, oh man, look at all that trash they're putting out. How much trash do you put out, man? You have people come by every week to pick up all the garbage that you're putting out.
In Los Angeles County, near the town of Lancaster, police have been rounding up unhoused people and dropping them in the Mojave Desert, where summer temperatures average over 38 degrees Celsius.
I'm sorry,
or
what?
over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. This is unconscionable and tantamount to attempted murder. While this particular horror is confined to just one county in California, there's another you've probably encountered if you've ever walked under an overpass, sat on a park bench, or waited at a bus stop in a US city. Unusable armrest on park benches, narrow and pitched bus stop seating, even large concrete spikes. It's called hostile or anti-homeless architecture, using the built environment to make the lives of the unhoused even more miserable by deterring.
It's more common than we might believe. The infrastructure or this anti-homelessness infrastructure that they're putting up, it's definitely a thing, and it's probably in any and every city that is around in the United States for sure. I remember going to Houston this last year, I think it was, and I stayed on the northwest side of town, and it's a place that I've been to several times. Went out to 1960, and if you go and come down, is it here? I think it's here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is where it is. So under the freeway used to just be like all paved, flat. Instead they put these rocks down, so you can see where it was flat. But now they just put rocks. For, I guess, rocks make great for throwing, and they want us to throw some rocks. But that is what you call anti-homeless,
or preventing them from using public infrastructure and amenities to sleep, escape the elements, or just relax. This liberal response to a systemic problem is not only cruel, but wastes money that could be used to provide unhoused people with the services and support they need to return to dignified housing.
Yep.
Another capitalist innovation in increasing the ranks of the reserve army of labor also began in the 70s.
We'd rather spend money on doing this type of shit than actually solving the problem.
What finance wonks call securitization of debt. In plain English, this term means creating a new security, a financially tradable asset, by pooling other assets. In 1970, one such security, the now infamous mortgage-backed security, was created and then tipped the first domino on the long road to the 2008 financial crash. However, this debt securitization market didn't really take off until 1983, when Fannie Mae concocted the first collateralized mortgage obligations. For our purposes, what's important about this particular financial scheme is that it relies on subprime debt. Now, a house isn't just a place you live. It's been partially abstracted by capital entities into a purely financial asset.
Your living arrangement
these assets
is your
didn't
investment
have the power
vehicle.
to bring down the housing market because of a law passed in 1933 called the Glass-Steagall Act. Among other important reforms, the bill separated commercial banking from investment banking. This is important because, hypothetically speaking, suppose a bank could both write mortgages and trade securities. This would create an incentive to generate as many mortgages as possible so that they could be pooled and turned into tradable securities. In order to do that, more and more subprime mortgages would need to be issued, greatly reducing the quality of the debt by introducing large quantities of subprime debt. Eventually, the loans will be called and holders of this debt would go bankrupt. Thankfully, that couldn't happen while this part of the Glass-Steagall Act remained law. As liberal laws go, it's pretty solid. Surely, no one would repeal it. So Bill Clinton repealed it, signing the Financial Services Modernization Act into law in 1999 and allowing banks to do both commercial and investment banking. Banking executives and other members of the 1% made incredible amounts of money. The true scale of it is difficult to convey.
And so another thing about what happens during depressions and what happens during when the housing crisis happened, or when any type of crisis like that happens, COVID, in the game of capitalism, the wealth continues to get accumulated by the top percent. Now, if that sounds confusing, I can make it clear. Basically, if you have all the money and you're fine, like people that are extremely rich are going to be fine in a depression or in a crisis like that. Not only will they be fine, they will have people working for them to ensure that they are fine, to make sure that their investments are adjusted, whether that means cashing out and making sure that they have their money in the right places that are failure proof, essentially, or just making sure that they have enough financial assets to be able to clear the hurdle of the crisis once it's over. And once it is over, things are ripe for the picking, because as we saw with the housing crisis, once the housing crisis happened and everybody lost their homes and everything was foreclosed on, well, you had a bunch of homes that were available to be purchased. And if you had the money, then you could just go buy up all the homes. Especially at that rate, they were much cheaper. That's how you really invest. It's a very sleazy. Investing is so sleazy when it comes to doing it in that tactic, where you basically keep all the money, wait for things to go down, buy in, wait for those values to go up, sell, keep all the money, and wait for it to happen again. That's how wealth keeps being accumulated, smaller and smaller, to basically the rich. That's how the 1% becomes the 0.01%.
Unfortunately, the party bus hit a brick wall in September 2008, when Lehman Brothers, the fourth largest investment bank, filed for bankruptcy, with their holdings of over $600 billion in assets. This began a cascade through an already weak economy that greatly...
And if you haven't been noticing in the news recently, there are financial banks that have gone essentially in foreclosure. Oh, thanks, Moobot. I forgot about the ad breaks. I forgot I enabled that. And also Stream Elements for telling everybody. Yeah, there's been more than one bank that has basically closed up shop, and then the government has come in and started running the bank, and they basically sold off their assets to another bank for operation. It's not a good time right now. I would say we're in a recession, even though those top 1% keep showing that the stock market's doing really good for them.
Contributed to what we know today as the Great Recession. 6 million people lost their homes. As a result, unemployment, evictions, and homelessness again rose sharply, since subprime mortgages were held by people in precarious financial situations. When capital fails, normal people pay. You want to know a cool fact? We could house every single homeless person in the country without building a single new home. Sounds pretty bad that we don't just do it, right? Well, what if I told you we could give each of them 24 homes? Earlier we mentioned there are over 650,000 unhoused people in the US. There are over 16 million vacant homes that could be utilized to eradicate the entire phenomenon of homelessness. Of all the many proposed solutions to homelessness, only a few are moral and address the actual material needs of the people. Unfortunately, most are liberal and seek to work within the capitalist system. And although they are doomed to fail, they are the only ideas allowed to be tried. Ideas like building more affordable housing, or voucher programs that are either failures outright, or so limited in scope that they have no impact on the problem. And right now you probably expect me to talk about NIMBYs and YIMBYs, but that would be making the mistake of attributing causes of systemic problems to individuals. What matters is that we live under an amoral and callous system. It's a system that causes there to be an overabundance of homes that are unaffordable to the vast majority of the people, while human beings die of exposure on the streets just outside. But if there are so many vacant homes, why do we see so many articles from all around the US raising the alarm about housing shortages? The sensational, brief headlines obscure the fact that they're only talking about affordable housing.
Exactly.
Why is there a lack of affordable housing? Homes are treated as a commodity instead of shelter, and as of 1970, also an asset to be bought and sold on the stock market. Additionally, the most profitable housing to build isn't affordable. So what results from a system where there's constantly increasing demand for a commodity, but you're only building the most profitable version of that commodity? The omniscient invisible hand dictates that the market should be flooded with high-end, unaffordable homes that then lie mostly vacant.
Yes, not only that, most new homes that are built are complete crap. They are the bare minimum for a person to live in. The walls are thin. They aren't very well made. There are a lot of corners that are cut. new houses are complete. The cookie cutter homes that they sell are complete shit.
In addition to an incentive to flood the market with a product most people can't afford, there's a perverse incentive for the capitalist class to ensure there are always a large number of unhoused people. Due to the unhinged morality inherent in the system, the unhoused are used as a threat against the rest of the working class.
Exactly.
In Marxist terms, the and underhoused serve as a reserve army of labor that is primarily used by capitalists as a method of suppressing wages. After all, if there are a lot of unemployed people, high supply, then the price they can command in the market decreases, leading to a race to the bottom, where workers are forced to compete with one another over lower and lower wages. Since 2020, we've been living through yet another historic financial crisis caused by an abysmal response from the neoliberal establishment and capitalism's general fragility and inability to humanely handle crises. The resulting U.S. death toll of over 1 million people is criminally negligent at best and a crime against humanity at worst. In addition, millions lost their jobs because their employers couldn't or wouldn't pay their employees to stay home. Like clockwork, layoffs and mass job loss led to even more people being unable to afford stable shelter. Eventually, the pandemic subsided. Or more precisely, capital owners forced everyone to return to in-person work, despite the outrageous risk to public health.
Exactly
the economy has been mostly stagnant, while the media
Grandma's
dutifully
gotta
assures
go.
us that
We
we're
gotta
just
get
about
back
to turn
to
the
making
corner.
money.
However, according to numbers from the HUD's 2023 Annual Homelessness Assessment Report, it looks like the corner isn't even on the map. U.S. homelessness reached a record high in 2023, increasing by 12% over the previous year to a staggering 653,000 people. According to the report, this is the highest number since reporting began in 2007. It strains even the most patriotic credulity to believe that the United States is anything but a decaying empire unwilling to care for its citizens in a manner that any reasonable and moral person would consider civilized. So, what's the solution? We need an immediate decommodification of housing, seizure of all housing stock, and distribution based on need, with mansions and similar properties either being leveled or turned into public accommodations. We need to develop a communal concept of housing, which would also entail
He wants to level mansions. Let's do it. I'm down.
learning to more adequately care for one another and move away from isolating and inefficient single-family housing. Few other aspects of capitalism lay out so starkly the utter inhumanity inherent to the system as homelessness. Under this system, profit is so much more important than people.
It definitely is. If you, hold on, I want to go. How did I? Okay, clicked on. I clicked on the tab. What the man? Okay, so going back to this map of Houston that I was talking about earlier, you know, one thing that he just mentioned right now is, you know, let's plow over mansions. Sounds comical, but let me give an example here. This is down the street from where I grew up. Where I grew up in Houston wasn't necessarily the greatest place, but it wasn't necessarily the worst place either. So yeah, don't get it confused. I didn't grow. Well, I did grow up in a apartment complex. I remember our apartment complex got condemned. We were on the news. My cousin was on the news. My cousins were on the news, talking about our condemned apartments that we all lived in. Yeah, so that's how bad those apartments were. But fret not, for they plowed those apartments over, and I don't think they ever rebuilt them. They just put a shopping center there. So what was down the street from where I grew up was stables. It was a home. It was like horse stables. They plowed those over, and now there's a school there. That's good, actually. I prefer that. But across the street was just empty fields, and I remember there was like a little diamond shamrock. And so here's that school that they built. Is this working? I gotta bring this over. Yeah, here's that school that they built. And so, you know, neighborhood's not too bad. There's a church over there. And then they decided to build $350,000 at the time homes across the street. These are all townhomes. I think they now probably go for I would say $500,000 at this point. The the solution isn't to build housing that is extremely expensive. It's to build affordable housing. You could have easily built apartments there that would have been better for more people to live in. You have a school right across the street. How can that not be a better situation? Now, what I am always surprised about when I go back to Houston is that I remember this church used to have some big slides right here. They were big metal slides, and they would burn you in the summer because, you know, it's 100 degrees outside in Texas. But yeah, here's some older townhomes that are right up on each other, right next to each other, traditional townhomes. And then here's the church, which has gotten mega big, by the way, since I remember it being there. I was an altar boy. But you have one of the poorest apartments that I have had the pleasure of being to. These apartments, I am surprised, are still up. Yeah, I don't know how they are. I've heard things about this place. But I guess you're right next to the church, so I don't know. Could have made better, instead of building those $350,000, $500,000 homes that they built literally across the street. We're right down the street from this. They could have built another apartment complex, or they could have built something that was affordable housing, but instead they didn't. So if the profit motive is there, then that's going to happen. It's not a logical solution to what's happening right now in with this whole homeless epidemic and the way that things are being done in the United States.
To put it bluntly, inanimate dollar bills and gold bars have better housing conditions than 650,000 American citizens and
True.
most of the rest of the world. We have everything we need to solve this crisis, except the collective will. These analysis episodes are only possible thanks to our generous patrons. As a little thank you for your support, all patrons get early access to analysis episodes, as well as an audio version of the news. If you'd like to help support the show, consider becoming a patron.
Excellent episode. I give kudos to that. Very well done. Oh wait, this is just my YouTube. Okay, next I will cover Hind Rajab. This headline speaks volumes about the Palestinian experience. We get killed, oppressed, and displaced, and then we have to fight for even to get a fraction of recognition of our suffering. Meanwhile, the media denies our aggressors' responsibility. 5-year-old Palestinian girl found dead after being trapped in car with dead relatives. How does that make sense? It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make any sense to me as to why that is a way that you would phrase things. Again, Owen was the one that quoted that. He reposted it there, but I think he quoted it also in saying something else. Yeah, this is just racism. 4 major Western news outlets covering the story of Hind Rajab. None of them use the word killed or Israel. This is not an accident. It is a systemic effort to whitewash the crimes of Israel and its complicity in those crimes. So, awful U.S. reporting of it is. Yeah, if it wasn't bad enough that they murdered this child and her relatives, then the misrepresentation or misleading of the story that is put out is just kind of like the bigoted cherry on top that the United States kind of in the media aspect loves to do, right? Anytime it's an immigrant or a person of color, the cops are always in the right. Nobody else is in the wrong. But the person that was murdered or killed is vaguely described as being deceased. Just like in this, oh yeah, there's the other story. I'll show that in a minute. But yeah, okay, so let's go to CNN's coverage on it. This was 9 days ago.
A 6-year-old girl has been trapped in a car since Monday after she and her family came under Israeli fire, according.
She's trapped in a car, and she and her family have been trapped in a car since Monday. This was 9 days ago, sir. It's February 1st. It is the 10th.
To the Palestinian Red Crescent Society. CNN's Jumana Karache reports now on her mother's desperation as her daughter runs out of time, and a warning: some of this content you may find disturbing.
She's trapped in a car since Monday.
A desperate call for help from 6-year-old Hind, terrified, trapped in a car. Everyone around her is dead. Hind was in the car with her uncle, his wife, and their 4 children, trying to flee fighting from this part of northern Gaza. The horror in that car captured in this call for help from her cousin, recorded by the Palestine Red Crescent.
Jesus.
Hello? Hello?
Relatives on Monday morning received a call from the family saying they'd come under Israeli military fire.
Rajab called me. She said, "Uncle, my dad, my mum, my sister and brother were killed. I'm bleeding. Help me, I'm dying." I told her, "Tie yourself with anything." At 4 p.m. she died. The only one left was the little girl, Hind. She said, "Please, I'm little, I'm injured, I peed myself."
Hind stayed on the phone with the Red Crescent for hours.
For hours.
What time is it? She said it's getting dark. I'm afraid of the dark.
The area was too dangerous, hard to reach. They had to keep Hind on the phone as they scrambled to try and get a team to her.
حواليكي في ضرب رصاص؟ خديني يا حبيبتي والله بدي اخذك بس مش بايدي هلا.
As a team was finally dispatched, a psychologist was now on the phone with Hind.
احنا كلنا معاكي وكلنا عم نستنى معاكي.
But days later, they're still waiting. The Red Crescent lost all contact with Hind and its 2 volunteers who were dispatched to find her. CNN gave the Israeli military details about the incident, including coordinates provided by the Palestine Red Crescent. The IDF says, quote, "We are unfamiliar with the incident described."
Oh, no, I don't think you are.
We are extremely worried. We need to know what happened. Did they manage to save Hind? Are they arrested? Did they survive? We need answers.
No one more desperate for answers than Hind's distraught mother.
If my daughter didn't die from the bullets, she is going to die from the cold, from the hunger. My daughter said, "Mama, I am hungry." She said, "Mama, I am thirsty. I'm cold." I call on the whole world to bring me back my daughter. I want anyone to call the army. We want our innocent little girl. Hind is too young to be going through this. She is too young.
So many, so young, gone in this war. But one family holds on to the hope that it's not too late to save their little Hind. Jumana Karache, CNN, London.
So that was on the 1st, which was 9 days ago. Here is a story from today, 10 hours ago. She was found dead.
She was the only one left alive and begged them to come and rescue her.
Hold on. Okay, I cannot hear that at all. I'm going to crank that up.
أجي أخذك حواليكي في ضرب رصاص
We were keeping the calls between us and her going. We didn't want to cut the communication because we were afraid that something would happen to her. Her calls were so painful, with an innocent voice. She was with us on the phone for 3 hours.
The Red Crescent dispatched an ambulance within a few hours, but contact was lost with the team on board and with Hind. Yesterday...
So they dispatched an ambulance to her location because they knew the coordinates. This was over a week ago. That ambulance was basically dispatched, I believe, within the same day of them receiving her call. They were going to go out and rescue her.
Her mother was hopeful that she was still alive.
If only my daughter would return to me. I just hope she is okay.
And one thing to remember, they're not going across country to go 2,000 miles in one direction to go save somebody. Gaza is essentially 4 miles wide in some sections, 8 miles wide in some sections, and 25 miles long. That is the size of a reasonable sized downtown city, or city in the U.S. in comparison. It doesn't take long to get across, especially going in either direction.
Any mother, I only want the best for her.
Fighting in Gaza City had stalled any additional attempt to rescue Hind until now, 12 days since the 6-year-old last spoke to emergency workers from a bullet-ridden car. It was her own family who found her body today, along with those of her aunt and uncle and 3 cousins. Nearby, this was all that was left of the ambulance that came.
Okay, that ambulance got hit by a bomb.
To rescue her, destroyed not just by bullets, but by shelling too. Yusuf Zeno and Ahmed Al-Madhoun were the 2 paramedics on board. Their bodies were also recovered today.
Hind witnessed the moment when our teams were bombed because she was also over the phone with us once we have lost connection with the team. I can't imagine what she had experienced as a little girl. She barely 6 years old.
14 Red Crescent paramedics have been killed since the start of the war in Gaza. The rules of war say medical personnel must not be targeted in a conflict. The Palestinian Red Crescent has accused the Israeli military of ignoring those conventions.
Even with coordination, our teams have been directly and deliberately targeted and bombed, which has resulted to 2 of my colleagues being killed. It's not the first incident and it will not be the last.
Channel 4 News asked the Israel Defense Forces for a response. None has been forthcoming. Israel has previously accused Hamas of using ambulances to transport weapons and...
Yeah, anything is an excuse to bomb the shit out of these ambulances and anybody trying to provide aid. One story that kind of seems to be slipping the U.S. media is that the IDF has bombed the shit out of every single hospital that is in Gaza. They're absolutely bombed to hell. If they are operable, they're barely operable. It is a point that they have made. When one of the first hospitals was being bombed, actually 12 hospitals had already been hit at that point when that story broke. God, I don't remember the name of the hospital, but it was a very big story. They showed a JDAM hitting the ground. Everybody that was against the story said, no, that's not a JDAM. But however, in every video you could hear the sound of a JDAM. It's a very unique sound. Hitting the hospital, and then they said, oh, it only hit the parking lot. And it only hit the parking lot where there were a bunch of people. It didn't hit the actual hospital. So yeah, a bunch of people outside died, but they were all terrorists. And then the story changed to, oh no, it was a Hamas rocket that blew up and hit the hospital. And the story was ever changing consistently. However, we concentrated on that story, and instead of saying, hey, what else is going on, everybody tried to deflect and say that it was not a bombing of the hospital. And instead, what else has happened? They've continued to bomb more hospitals. They've continued to bomb ambulances. They've continued to bomb every single place that they have told these people that is safe passage, that is a safe area to go to. They are now going to execute a siege on Rafah. And who knows what the hell is going to happen. If you haven't seen that Western countries have started disassociating themselves with the actions of the IDF, you need to pay attention, because what's being passed on the nightly news right here, we're not really getting the full story from these guys. It's a bunch of bullshit. It really is. Especially if it's information that is being sent over by the IDF. It's just total shit. That we're getting from them, and these assholes are taking it like it's the gospel. It is not.
Fighters. Hind Rajab wanted to become a doctor, according to her mother. More than 10,000 children have been killed in Gaza since October, according to Save the Children.
So there's two aspects to this story. One, the way that the messaging is portrayed in media. We always use words that don't quite give the graveness of what actually happened on the ground. I know the audio is not very loud here, but her car with her family was shot up, destroyed. She was in it. She was trapped. I don't know what the situation was exactly as far as to how she was trapped or why she couldn't get out. But I would imagine you are mentally and physically paralyzed, especially if something of this magnitude happens. Not only that, the ambulance that was sent out, this is what's left of the ambulance. That ambulance, there are reports that the ambulance had lasers pointed at it. So, again, two things. The wording, and I'll save the wording for the second part because it's more of a thing that the media does. But this is how a JDAM works. How a smart bomb works. These are JDAMs. What we've handed over to the IDF, and I say we as in the United States military, before all of this started and years ago, is we handed over 30,000 dumb bombs that are just bombs that get dropped on whatever target you want to drop them on. And they are, I think they range between 500 pound and 2,000 pound bombs. Now they're dumb bombs as in like you drop them and they're going to go basically straight down with no guidance. But what we also do to these dumb bombs is we put JDAMs. It's a JDAM is a, what is it? Joint something munitions. But this is how a JDAM works.
Forming an unguided bomb.
So you take an unguided bomb and you add guidance to it.
Integrating a sophisticated guidance system onto its tail. But how exactly does a wingless weapon and lacking propulsion mechanisms manage to navigate to its designated target? To tackle this intriguing question, we'll draw upon the analogy of a skydiving buddy to provide a relatable comparison, aiding in your comprehension of this complex process. So stay tuned and don't miss a beat. JDAMs and glide bombs are usually based on this Mark 80 series. Let's take a look inside this most common dumb weapon.
And the Mark 80 has definitely been dropped in Gaza. There are actually photos of duds that were dropped that didn't detonate, and they show the M82 or the M80 insignia on it, the stamp.
System. At the front is the nose fuse well, all joined by a fuse conduit. Sandwiched in the middle of this rod is the explosive-filled 500-pound warhead, which translates to around 227 kilograms. This channel rod is connected to a tail fuse. Just a reminder, this is an unguided, low-drag general-purpose bomb, part of the United States Mark 80 series of weapons system. Let's take a look at how this works in a super simplified animation. This bomb is usually dropped from a bomber or an F-18 fighter jet. When released, it falls just like a normal dumb weapon.
They don't just come out of the sky for no reason.
The bomb can be fitted with a nose fuse, a tail fuse, or both simultaneously. Upon hitting the ground, the frontal fuse activates, burning the fuse conduit from the front to the back, thus creating a huge explosion. The alternative option is using the tail fuse FMU-139. This is usually used for delayed action and is set by the pilot. When it hits the target, the weight of the bomb will penetrate the concrete surface of a building. The fuse
So what he just said is the rear fuse, if they decide to use that configuration, is the rear fuse is controlled by the pilot.
The frontal fuse activates, burning the fuse conduit from the front to the back, thus creating a huge explosion. The alternative option is using the tail fuse FMU-139. This is usually used for delayed action and is set by the pilot. When it hits the target, the weight of the bomb will penetrate the concrete surface of a building.
Yeah, I would imagine dropping a 2,000-pound bomb in that shape is definitely going to penetrate the roof of a building, and if not go to the bottom floor, at least go through 1 or 2 floors and make the impact that you're definitely going to want it to make.
The fuse activates and the conduit rod, which creates the 500-pound explosion after a few seconds as programmed. This can create a lot of damage considering its small $4,000 price tag. Let's delve into the process of upgrading this into a guided weapon. First, the transformation begins by removing the low-drag tail, paving the way for the installation of the guidance section. Within this new configuration, nestled inside the tail, we discover the intricacies of its guidance system.
So this is what they hit the ambulance
guidance kit collaborates seamlessly with a military-grade global positioning unit, ensuring precise navigation towards its intended target. Alongside these components, one can find the adapter ring facilitating the attachment of the telemetry antenna, crucial for transmitting data, as well as the encryption key battery.
Hi. I'm very angry right now. But yeah, just going over the Hind Rajab story, very upset. But yeah, it sucks the way that this story has been processed in U.S. media up to this point. Yeah. I saw you followed me though. Thank you for the follow. I can actually replay the action that it makes whenever you do follow. So like I'll have like all these like alerts set up. So whenever you follow, it does this.
I like what you got. Good job.
It shows your name. That's always fun. I'm glad you enjoyed that. So the other part of this story is they massacred the ambulance. They massacred the guys that they sent out to go help her. Now, there was reports that this ambulance had lasers pointed at it. Now, why would you point a laser at an ambulance? If you're the IDF, what you're doing is you're doing laser-guided munitions, as in a jet is flying overhead, dropping a bomb, and it requires laser guidance on the ground, which is what the United States has been doing in Yemen, by the way. These munitions require laser guidance, and it's not going to come from a jet that's doing however many 100 miles an hour across the sky. They dropped a bomb, as described here.
Sensitive information. Venturing deeper into its structure, we encounter the thermal batteries, vital for powering the system, and the composite fins, strategically positioned to aid in directing the missile towards its objective. These fins, meticulously controlled by gears.
And I really like this channel on YouTube because,
responding to commands to adjust.
Again, like I said the other day, these right wingers. I wouldn't say AA Taylor's really a right winger. I don't think they are. But they love to tell you about how bombs work and how much they cost and, you know, what they do and what they can blow up. AI Telly seems to be really in the subject of what's been going on. And I think this is why they dropped this video on how a smart bomb works. And really, it's how a JDAM specifically works.
However, the evolution of this weapon doesn't halt here. It can also be added with a laser-guided kit in the front, elevating its intelligence quotient further. To increase the range, they even added wings called the glide bombs, or JDAM Extended Range, or JDAM-ER as they called it. The wing kit will triple the range of JDAM from 15 miles to 46 miles, which translates to around 75 kilometers for the same accuracy. Let's take a look at how this JDAM works.
I don't think they're using the extended kit. I think they're just dropping it
loaded into
like
this aircraft before
the regular
takeoff
ones,
and manually altered by the aircrew
like I said, I think before you maybe joined, we gave Israel, we gave the IDF 30,000
or GPS. In simpler terms, it uses military-grade satellites to pinpoint its exact locations if needed, and provides real all-weather capability since GPS is not affected by rain, clouds, fog, or smoke. In short, doesn't miss its target, provided if it's stationary. Step 3. Remember those internal batteries and control gears. The inertial guidance clock keeps track of its position and controls the gears of the fins. So when the JDAM is off course, the fins at the back will redirect or reconfigure according to the GPS or inertial guidance clock to maintain its course. But how does it turn when it does not have wings? Let's take, for example, this guy going skydiving for his vacation. Skydivers will use the surface area of their arms, legs, and torso to change the direction and orientation of their body in the air, just as shown in the animation. My point is, if a human can turn using body surface, now imagine having an aerodynamic weapon that weighs around 500 pounds fallen under gravity.
Or 2,000 pounds.
A slight deflection on the tail, considering the amount of air pressure, will help it direct to its designated target. The JDAM can also be upgraded to this small diameter bomb called GLSDB, developed by both the American company
so this is a different type of bomb. I don't think they're using this one just because it... man, fucking... I used to like Saab. I thought they were kind of cool, but no longer. No longer. Boeing, I always knew Boeing were just warmongers that happen to make airplanes that people travel on commercially. Did you know Rolls-Royce makes the engines for most airplanes? Or for a good amount of airplanes, I don't think most. Yeah, that's a thing. So fuck Saab, fuck Boeing, fuck all these guys. Yeah, he goes on to talk about those bombs and how they basically get launched from the HIMARS. Yeah, so, you know, they just kind of drop these bombs. I think the maybe he's alluding to the HIMARS as far as what hit the supply vehicles, because I think there was a truck that got hit that was attempting to deliver supplies to Gaza. That was just in line. 4K 3D that seemed like a smaller explosion. It seemed in line with what the animation did. Seemed in line with what happened to that truck. Again, these guys don't specifically say what they're talking about as it relates to current events, but it is kind of funny how their videos are very much related to current events. Like how the B-1 bomber bombed Syria and Iraq, how the U.S. is attacking the Houthi, how the Houthi use their missile drones to attack ships, how mortars work. I don't think they talked about the Iron Sting, but they kind of alluded to the Iron... I think they did cover the Iron Sting eventually. But yeah, how the Yasim 105 works. So yeah, they don't really say it out loud, but they give you an idea as to what's going on. So soft language. This is a bit by George Carlin. I definitely wanted to play this, and it really talks about George Carlin's been dead for a while now. God bless his soul, his Catholic soul. You know, you do the whole whatever that thing was. I forgot. I don't know. It's been a while. It talks about how, we use soft language in the U.S. So I'll play it. Is this low?
I don't like words that
Holy shit.
I don't like words that conceal reality. I don't like
Oh,
euphemisms.
I gotta fix that. The audio is really low to begin with.
Or euphemistic language. And American English is loaded with euphemisms. Because
Yes.
Americans have a lot of trouble dealing with reality. Americans have trouble facing the truth. So
We definitely have problems facing the truth. That is absolutely right, sir.
they invent a kind of a soft language to protect themselves from it. And it gets worse with every generation. For some reason, it just keeps getting worse. I'll give you an example of that. There's a condition in combat. Most people know about it. It's when a fighting person's nervous system has been stressed to its absolute peak and maximum, can't take any more input. The nervous system has either snapped or is about to snap. In the First World War, that condition was called shell shock.
Shell shock.
Simple, honest, direct language. 2 syllables. Shell shock. Almost sounds like the guns themselves. That was 70 years ago. Then a whole generation went by, and the Second World War came along, and the very same combat condition was called battle fatigue. 4 syllables now. Takes a little longer to say.
Battle fatigue. Yeah, so we don't like to... We like to sugarcoat things, right? So we want to get away from the obvious atrocity of what has happened to these people.
Doesn't seem to hurt as much. Fatigue is a nicer word than shock. Shell shock. Battle fatigue. Then we had the war in Korea, 1950. Madison Avenue was riding high by that time, and the very same combat condition was called operational exhaustion. Hey, we're up to 8 syllables
Korean
now.
War.
And the humanity has been squeezed completely out of the phrase. It's totally sterile now. Operational exhaustion. Sounds like something that might happen to your car. Then, of course, came the war in Vietnam, which has only been over for about 16 or 17 years. And thanks to the lies and deceit surrounding that war, I guess it's no surprise that the very same condition was called post-traumatic stress
We don't
disorder.
even call it that anymore. It's just PTSD.
Still 8 syllables, but we've added a hyphen. And the pain is completely buried under jargon.
Exactly.
Post-traumatic stress disorder. I'll bet you if we'd have still been calling it shell shock, some of those Vietnam veterans might have gotten the attention they needed at the time. I'll bet you that. I'll bet you that. But it didn't happen. And one of the reasons is because we were using that soft language, that language that takes the life out of life. And it is a function of time. It does keep getting worse. Give you another example. Sometime during my life, toilet paper became bathroom tissue. I wasn't notified of this.
That it did.
No one asked me if I agreed with it. It just happened. Toilet paper became bathroom tissue. Sneakers became running shoes. False teeth became dental appliances.
Dental appliances?
Medicine
I haven't heard that.
became medication.
Yeah, medication.
Information became directory assistance. The dump became the landfill.
Yeah.
Car crashes became automobile accidents.
Yeah.
Partly cloudy became partly sunny. Motels became motor lodges.
Okay, I
House
didn't hear that
trailers
one.
became mobile homes. Used cars became previously owned transportation. Room service became guest room dining. And constipation became occasional irregularity.
Thank you. Every commercial that comes on
When I was a
at
little
4
kid,
p.m.
if I got sick, they wanted me to go to the hospital and see the doctor. Now they want me to go to a health maintenance organization or a wellness center to consult a healthcare delivery professional. Poor people used to live in slums. Now the economically disadvantaged occupy substandard housing in the inner cities.
Economically disadvantaged, yes.
And they're broke. They're broke. They don't have a negative cash flow position. They're fucking broke. Because a lot of them were fired. You know, fired. Yeah. Management wanted to curtail redundancies in the human resources area.
Well, they fired or laid
off.
So
many people are no longer viable members of the workforce. Smug, greedy, well-fed people have invented a language to conceal their sins. It's as simple as that. The CIA doesn't kill anybody anymore. They
capitalist language.
People. Or they depopulate the area. The government doesn't lie, it engages in disinformation. The Pentagon actually measures nuclear radiation in something they call sunshine units.
Shut the fuck up.
Israeli murderers are called commandos.
Oh!
Arab
You know, I knew this video related to what we were talking about here.
Commandos are called terrorists. Contra killers are called freedom fighters. Well, if crime fighters fight crime and firefighters fight fire, what do freedom fighters fight? They never mention that part of it to us, do they? Never mention that part of it. And some of this stuff is just silly. We all know that. Like on the airlines, they say they want a pre-board. Well, what the hell is pre-board? What does that mean? To get on before you get on? They say they're going to pre-board those passengers in need of special assistance. Cripples! Simple, honest, direct language. There's no shame attached to the word cripple that I can find in any dictionary.
I still personally find it offensive. But I guess that's something that's, you know, ingrained at this point.
No shame attached to it. In fact, it's a word
because
used
of all
in Bible
this.
translations. Jesus healed the cripples. Doesn't take 7 words to describe that condition. But we don't have any cripples in this country anymore. We have the physically challenged. Is that a grotesque enough evasion for you? How about differently abled? I've heard them called that, differently abled. You can't even call these people handicapped anymore. They'll say, we're not handicapped, we're handy-capable. These poor people have been bullshitted by...
I don't say I'm a stroke victim, I'm a stroke survivor. Yeah.
The system into believing that if you change the name of the condition, somehow you'll change the condition. Well, hey, cousin, doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. We have no more deaf people in this country, hearing impaired. No one's blind anymore, partially sighted or visually impaired.
Yeah, it's funny. They don't call a hearing aid, you know, what it is. They call it a hearing aid. But if you have glasses, they don't call glasses seeing aids. They call them glasses.
We have no more stupid people. Everybody has a learning disorder. Or he's minimally exceptional. How would you like to be told that about your child? He's minimally exceptional. Oh, thank God for that. Psychologists actually have started calling ugly people those with severe appearance deficits.
My face.
It's getting so bad that any day now I expect to hear a rape victim referred to as an unwilling sperm recipient.
Shut the hell up. One step too far, George.
And we have no more old people in this country. No more old people. We shipped them all away, and we brought in these senior citizens. Isn't that a typically American 20th century phrase? Bloodless, lifeless. No pulse in one of them. A senior citizen.
Everybody we sacrificed for COVID.
To terms with it, I know it's here to stay. We'll never get rid of it. That's
so
what they're going to be
some
called.
Chicken
so
nuggies.
I'll relax on that. But the one I do resist, the one I keep resisting, is when they look at an old guy and they'll say, "Look at him, Dan. He's 90 years young." Imagine the fear of aging that reveals. To not even be able to use the word old to describe someone. To have to use an antonym. And fear of aging is natural, it's universal, isn't it? We all have that. No one wants to get old, no one wants to die, but we do. So we bullshit ourselves. I started bullshitting myself when I got to my 40s. As soon as I was in my 40s, I'd look in the mirror and I'd say, well, I guess I'm getting older. Older sounds a little better than old, doesn't it? Sounds like it might even last a little longer.
Yeah.
Bullshit, I'm getting old. And it's okay, because thanks to our fear of death in this country, I won't have to die. I'll pass away.
Nice.
Or I'll expire like a magazine subscription. If it happens in the hospital, they'll call it a terminal episode. The insurance company will refer to it as negative patient care outcome.
Very nice.
And if it's the result of malpractice, they'll say it was a therapeutic misadventure. I'm telling you, some of this language makes me want to vomit. Well, maybe not vomit.
Yeah.
Makes me want to engage in an involuntary personal protein spill.
This is the reality right here. This is the reality that we're living in right now with everything that is happening in Gaza. Not only in Gaza, in the West Bank too. This is reality, and this is what we're fed. 100%. This is exactly how it is. There's death and destruction happening everywhere. We know who's carrying it out. We know who the victims are. And this is what's being presented to us. This is what has always been presented to us. What we see today is only possible because of the capability of social media. This video right here would not be possible without social media. This information from these news reports
was the little girl here
would not be possible without social media. What we would get instead is a nice, happy sunshine and rainbows, that everything's going okay. Everybody's doing well. There's still 2.27 million people alive in Gaza, and yeah, hey, that's better than 30,000 people dying, 100,000 to some estimates. Hey, look at the bright side. You still got 2 million people that are alive. How about that? Did you ever think about that? That's what would be presented to us if we weren't able to receive the information that we're receiving today. We would receive these words that hide the truth. We think in language. The quality of our thoughts and ideas can only be as good as the quality of our language. George Carlin. It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. I think we do it to the audience of the United States to soften the blow, because we need people to be complacent. We need people to not understand the full brutality of what is happening on the ground. We need to keep people in the dark. And then what ends up happening is these people that are in the dark, they go on social media and they see these posts. They see the carnage that is happening. And they say, oh, that's a fake video. That can't be happening. That's not what my news channel is telling me. Or that's not what Jake Tapper was saying. That's not what my trusted correspondent Jesse Waters is saying. They wouldn't lie to me. They're my friend. We feed the general public in the United States all of these happy stories, and then at the same time tell them to be scared of their neighbor because, hey, your neighbor could be the person with the gun that robbed this bank today. So at the same time that we try to keep them dumb, or the media tries to keep everybody dumb, they try to keep everybody scared. And that's what leads to the misunderstanding or disunderstanding of the reality of what is actually happening in the world. And especially if you come up and say, hey, this bad stuff's happening and it's because of the guy that's in the White House. Well, not my best friend Joe Biden. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't betray me in that way. You must be a bad person. So this is how this is all interconnected. All of this stuff where we should be mourning the loss, and this death being incomprehensible for the common person. For this child to die for absolutely no reason at the hands of a horrible, horrible military that has been doing this to at least 27,000 people. We need to come back and understand why we've been trained to believe that this is not possible. And to understand why we're being told that it's not possible. But let's see what they are saying today. It's February 10th. This is Nightly News. Let's play that beat.
Tonight, a deadly helicopter.
Oh God, I can never hear anybody. Is it my audio, man? Maybe I need to crank up my audio more.
Crash on the way to Las Vegas this Super Bowl weekend. As we get,
and of course, we're gonna get told about the Super Bowl and Taylor Swift and all this other bullshit.
Stunning new details from that plane crash on
because you can't be down. If you're feeling down, you're probably not going to go out and consume and buy stuff and have a good time at the Super Bowl. Can't have that. Like Vince McMahon said after 9/11, the show must go on because, you know, profits have to be made. He didn't say that last part.
A Florida highway. New video of the plane moments after impact, bursting into flames. Right. 3 survivors fleeing for their lives.
Is there anybody else in there?
The 2 pilots killed. The investigation into what went wrong. New attacks on the campaign trail. President Biden and Donald Trump ripping into the other's mental fitness as Nikki Haley goes one step further, handing out mental competency tests at her rally.
Oh my God.
2 80-year-olds up as president? We can do better.
Israel says they are going to invade Rafah in southern Gaza, where 1 million people have fled to, many already facing starvation in tent cities. Warnings today that it would be a humanitarian catastrophe. The manhunt intensifies in Tennessee for the man accused of killing a sheriff's deputy. Police say he is armed and dangerous, while his girlfriend is now in custody.
This is NBC Nightly News with Jose Diaz-Balart.
How many thumbs have to die for you people to be happy? For you ACAB people to be happy? I just want to know.
A pair of deadly aviation disasters tonight. As hundreds of thousands head to Las Vegas this weekend for the Super Bowl, we are getting late details of a Vegas-bound helicopter crashing, all 6 on board believed killed. It happened shortly after takeoff from Palm Springs, California.
I find this map coincidental with wasn't there a military helicopter crash? LA? No. California? Like recently? Yeah, 5 Marines died.
Let's turn out of the...
Didn't they show a similar map? Okay, maybe not that story. But I think it was the same area Maybe we shouldn't be flying across the mountains right now, because this is a mountainous region.
Investigators are just getting to the scene. And this is the scene immediately after a private plane crashed on Friday, slamming into a Florida highway. In this new video, you can see 3 survivors fleeing for their lives. The pilots did not make it out alive. That highway still shut down today as investigators try to determine what went wrong. We begin tonight with George Solis with the very latest.
Tonight, dramatic new video from that fiery crash along a southwest Florida interstate.
Is there anybody else in there?
Kyle Cavalier running towards the flaming wreckage as what looks to be 3 survivors run away. The trio, frantic and shaken.
Are they alive?
I don't know.
Knowing what you know now, would you do it again? Absolutely.
Cavalier, whose young son was in the car, made the difficult choice to see if he could help.
Just relax, buddy.
Pulling up even as a plume of thick black smoke and flames erupted from the jet.
Anytime you've seen anything on movies, it doesn't hold a candle to what you actually feel and see at that moment.
This afternoon, the Collier County Sheriff's Office saying pilot Edward Murphy and First Officer Ian Hoffman died in the crash. Crew members Sidney Bozeman and passengers Aaron Baker and Audra Green survived. According to authorities,
they did it. I know they did it.
The private jet took off from the Ohio State University Airport en route to Naples. The jet, not affiliated with the university, was just minutes away from landing at the Naples airport, according to the FAA. The pilot of the Bombardier Challenger 600 radio traffic control before the fiery crash.
We're clear to land, but we're not going to make the runway. We've lost both engines.
How unusual is it for a jet to lose both engines when fuel isn't a factor?
The last time that I can remember a dual engine loss like this was Sullenberger putting the Airbus into the Hudson River due to birds.
Tonight, the NTSB investigating this crash and also a deadly crash in California. The chopper was headed to Las Vegas, where the Super Bowl is taking place. According to a post on social media from a World Trade Organization official, the CEO of a major bank in Nigeria,
like crashed in the Mojave,
were among the 6 people killed. George Solis, NBC News.
Is it the Mojave?
And to politics now, and the campaign battle has become an issue of age. Today, both President Biden and former President Trump hitting the other on the issue, while Nikki Haley is attacking them both.
They're both old.
By questioning their mental fitness. Dasha Burns is on the campaign trail in South Carolina.
Nikki Haley tonight on the attack and not being subtle.
The party that dismisses their 80-year-old candidates is the party that will win president, without a doubt.
The former...
So what if they both do it? Will they both win? You dumbass.
South Carolina governor badly trailing former President Trump in her home state with 2 weeks until the GOP primary and looking to exploit the renewed focus on age in the presidential campaign.
They are grumpy old men. But I'll tell you, we can do better.
Haley is trying to...
Okay, I liked it better when Ramaswamy was fucking rapping to Eminem karaoke style on the mic instead. Surprising they bring up the Super Bowl without mentioning Taylor Swift. True.
To tie the former president to the
current actually, I don't think did they do their Super Bowl story? I think that's still to come. We'll see.
Lumping their age and mental acuity together in the wake of the special counsel's report on President Biden's handling of classified documents that alleges he struggles with his memory, something Mr. Biden has denied.
They were already doing the whole classified documents
Haley's campaign
thing.
Going so far as to pass out
This is the
mental
pettiest shit
competency
right
tests
here.
as the candidate made stops on her latest bus tour. Haley even trolling
Man,
Trump at
woman,
his rally
camera,
in South
TV,
Carolina today
whatever it
with
was
this
before.
billboard. Trump, for his part today, taking aim at Haley, whose husband is on a deployment in Africa with the National Guard.
What happened to her husband? Where is he? He's gone.
Haley firing back.
If you mock the service of a combat veteran, you don't deserve a driver's license, let alone being president of the United States.
Trump also jabbing Biden today over the special counsel's report.
They said he was a mental basket case. Okay, so is this guy going to make it to the start?
I had like 8 shots earlier, and they bring her up. Apparently, how the NFL would pay for her to make it there is just to break viewership. Yeah, I you know, they're saying that it's going to be the most watched Super Bowl in history, which every Super Bowl is the most watched Super Bowl in history. It's always gone up. I think there might have been 1 year or something when I don't know. I don't remember what happened. But yeah, it's going to be the most watched. They're going to say that it's the most watched. Everybody will be happy. There's actually bets on whether or not Kelsey will propose. There's all kinds of bets in Vegas, and it's in Vegas also. Crazy shit's going to go on.
The Biden campaign pushing back on the criticism, pointing the finger back at Trump, saying, quote,
but it involves her, so it matters? I mean, I guess.
Single time Donald Trump opens his mouth, he's confused, deranged, lying, or...
No. Damn it, I hit 1 hour again.
Or worse. In South Carolina, for some, Haley's call for new generational leadership is striking a chord.
That's one thing I do like about what Nikki Haley's been saying about, younger folks.
And Dasha Burton.
Hold on, they had Boomhauer on there.
Leadership is striking a chord.
That's one thing I do like about what Nikki Haley's been saying about, younger folks.
And Dasha Burns joins us now.
About younger folks. I think his veneers whispered a little bit. They were telling me secrets.
From Conway, South Carolina, where former President Trump was campaigning today. Dasha, what do the voters there tell you about this question of age?
Well, look, Jose, as President Biden's age comes under more scrutiny, including from Democrats, even though former President Trump is only 4 years younger, supporters we've met say for them, Trump's age simply isn't an issue. Jose?
How's it not an issue?
And tune in tomorrow for a busy morning on Meet the
Oh, my
Press.
God. Do I look like them? No. Whew. Oh, God.
Kristen Welker, including an exclusive interview with U.S. Secretary of Homeland
I'm going to be
Security,
asleep for that. Fuck that. I ain't watching that one.
A manhunt for a suspected murderer is underway right now in Tennessee after 2 sheriff's deputies were shot, one of them killed outside Knoxville. Officials now with a statewide warning that the suspect is armed and
Where
dangerous.
was the good guy with the gun?
Priya Shritha has the very latest.
That's all I want to know. There's always a bad guy with a gun.
Community on
There's
edge
never a good
while
guy with a gun.
42-year-old Kenneth DeHart, suspected of shooting 2 Blount County Sheriff's deputies,
Oh, there are 2 good
remains
guys
at
with a gun.
large. Police now
Maybe we
searching
need
the area
more
where
good
his
guys
car
with
was
guns.
found abandoned, asking neighbors to check their doorbell
Need
and
like
security
a,
cameras for sightings of DeHart.
A guy with a gun
They're going to find
is
him
armed.
soon.
That's
he
great.
can't run.
Tonight,
They always
DeHart's
have redundant
girlfriend,
wording, right?
32-year-old Carrie Matthews, and brother, 41-year-old Marcus DeHart, both arrested for allegedly helping him defy capture. According to court records, Matthews answered a
They
call
arrested
from
him
DeHart
for
and said they're
helping him
here
get
while
it- get
deputies
away?
were
Like-
at her home.
Law enforcement.
Everything's oh, dude, why'd you cut up your couch and wear it, man? Like, what the
They will
hell?
bring this individual into custody.
Authorities say DeHart, who's been convicted of a weapons charge from another police stop and standoff in 2004, is now armed
People
and
with arms
dangerous
are literally
and likely
armed and
on
dangerous,
foot.
yes.
He's been on the run since he allegedly shot and killed 43-year-old Deputy Greg McCowan and injured his partner, 22-year-old Deputy Shelby Eggers.
I mean, what are they, Uvalde
Authorities say
cops? Did
DeHart
they
was
not
stopped by the
expect to
deputies
be
Thursday
shot on
night
the
and
job? I
refused to
mean,
get out of his car. The deputies attempted to use a taser on him before DeHart allegedly pulled out a gun and fired at both of them. The Blount County Sheriff's Department now
This is why I say,
struggling to
you know,
come to
people
terms
should,
with the loss of one of their own. Police now
that man
urgently
with
working
hair
around the
has
clock to track
My
down a
world is
suspected
collapsing.
killer on the run. Priya Sridhar, NBC News.
And overseas now to the war in the Middle East and growing international alarm over the latest planned incursion into Gaza by Israel.
Dude, they
Matt
are.
Bradley has our report tonight from Tel Aviv.
Tonight, a refuge waits for war. Israel has said it's about to turn its guns on Rafah, a city in the southern Gaza Strip where
So
previously
they told
many in Gaza
everybody
had
to
been
move
told
to this
flee
city,
for safety.
and then they say they're going to bomb the city.
Place. How many times did you lie to us about this place?
What fucking sense does this make?
And then turning back and bombing us.
Now, among more than 1 million here, fear is spreading, along with starvation and disease.
We've been hearing that they want to come to Rafah. Just
No,
like
they
every
do.
city
They
in
really do
Gaza.
say the most
And
pointless
we're
shit.
so scared we don't know where to go.
Yeah, the reporters are.
Israeli Prime Minister
They
Benjamin
try to
Netanyahu
use.
ordered his military
So
to
I know.
prepare.
I think he just came in, but I was watching this video earlier about words that hide the truth from George Carlin, talking about soft language, right?
Terrorists.
Talking about like how like you're not old, you're a senior citizen, you're not all this it's not medicine, it's medication, all this shit like this, right? It's not post-traumatic stress disorder, it's PTSD. And so the end game is here, right?
Directory assistance.
This is the end game. Is they want to present you these nice and fancy words while this shit's happening. We're all sitting here dying, getting fat, and eating the worst foods. But hey, have you thought about Ozempic? Maybe you should get on Ozempic. It's only $100 like every 2 weeks. I mean, who can't afford that? Make sure you have insurance and that your insurance covers it, though, and it's still $100.
A plan to evacuate civilians here and destroy what's left of Hamas, calling Rafah a last bastion for the terrorist group.
Rafah is just 2 streets. If they bombed one of them, thousands of people will die. And
Yeah, exactly. You're not handicapped. You're just disabled.
These satellite images show how a sprawling tent city
I
has expanded
didn't
on
have a
Gaza's border
stroke.
with Egypt.
I'm not a stroke
Israel's
victim.
bombardment of
I'm a
Rafah
stroke
began 2 weeks
survivor.
ago. A preview of the horrors that might await the displaced people here. Dozens have already been killed. The UN sounding the alarm.
We are extremely worried.
Like, these people didn't get shot at or bombed. They are injured.
It's nearly impossible for us to protect them from tank fire, from artillery shells.
This week, President Biden voiced rare disagreement over Israel's attacks on Gaza.
The conduct of the response in the Gaza Strip has been over the top.
And Matt joins us now from Tel Aviv. Matt,
Can't
as the
agree with
assault
you over
on
the
Rafah
top.
looms, are Israel's attacks in
Slightly
Gaza continuing?
wounded, yeah.
Yeah, Jose, the Israeli army is continuing its attacks on the Gaza Strip. And now the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza is saying the death toll stands at more than 28,000. Jose?
28,000, dude.
Thank you. A Columbus, Ohio police sergeant is
Okay,
lucky
this
to be
is
alive
fucking
tonight following
insane.
a harrowing attempt to stop a stolen car this week. And it
Is there
was
anything
all
cops
caught on
aren't doing
camera.
these days?
The officer stands in front of the blue car and orders the driver to stop.
Stop the car! Stop the car!
She appears to speed up and plows into him, driving away with him on the hood. As he fires into the windshield.
Man, you better hit the brakes. Nope.
Until he's thrown off. The suspect was caught and charged. She remains hospitalized with injuries from the gunshot.
That dude looked fucked up. Hold on, look at
She
this.
remains hospitalized with injuries from the gunshot.
He's not having a good time right now.